Is it an infantry transport? Is it a scouting vehicle? Is it an anti-armor tank killer? Yes it is. The Bradley fighting vehicle might just be the most multi-talented vehicle we've covered to date. Starting production in the early 80s, the Bradley has served the U.S. Army valiantly in the Middle East, where it earned a place for itself in the hearts of America's soldiers. Though the Bradley and its many derivative models aren't perfect, this versatile war machine has proven that it can go toe-to-toe with some of the roughest and toughest military vehicles on the planet. So join us as we dive into the history and future of the Bradley fighting vehicle. As with countless pieces of modern military technology, the Bradley's inception can be traced back to the Cold War. The Cold War was a scary time, no matter how you slice it. Proxy wars, economic uncertainty, the threat of World War III, and even nuclear annihilation were all legitimate concerns for major world powers. As the U.S. Army observed the rapidly evolving landscape of geopolitics in the 50s and 60s, one thing became certain: anything could happen. Luckily, mortal fear can be a great motivator for technological innovation. The Army realized that having a main battle tank to counter enemy armor wasn't good enough by itself. What America needed was an armored vehicle that could be deployed in a high-intensity European conflict and could provide protection against chemical weapons, biological weapons, or even nuclear fallout. A vehicle that could contribute to an aggressive offensive but still prioritize the safety of its passengers. In 1958, the very first specifications were released by the Army for such a prototype vehicle. The Army called for a vehicle with a life support system that offered protection from outside contaminants. They also wanted the vehicle to have sealable firing ports for at least 5 infantrymen, as well as a 20mm autocannon and a 7.62mm machine gun. On top of this, the Army wanted the vehicle to weigh no more than 8 tons. For reference, the M60 Patton, America's primary battle tank at the time, weighed over 50 tons. Clearly, this would be an engineering challenge, to say the least. Some one-off prototypes were unveiled in the early 60s without much success, with the West Germans even getting involved for a hot minute in 1963. In 1964, the Army opened the project to the public and started taking bids from military contractors to help develop the new vehicle. The first contract was awarded to the Pacific Car and Foundry Company, and their first prototype, the XM701, was delivered in 1965. The XM701 was a pretty neat vehicle. It came with a 425 horsepower engine, enough room for 3 crewmen plus 9 infantrymen, armor thick enough to block Soviet MG fire, and it could drive in water. However, it still wasn't quite what the Army had in mind. For one, it weighed in at over 25 tons, more than 3 times as heavy as the original specification. It was also much less agile and mobile than what the Army had desired, and probably worst of all, the XM701 couldn't fit inside cargo transport planes. The project was canceled in 1965, and interest waned in the new vehicles program for a short period. This short period was interrupted by none other than the Soviet Union, who unveiled their BMP-1 in 1967. This amphibious fighting vehicle did many of the things the United States had originally envisioned for their own fighting vehicle. The BMP weighed in at less than half of the XM701. It was fast, nimble, offered protection for 3 crewmen and 8 passengers, and even came with anti-tank capabilities. America responded to this unveiling by immediately assembling a task force to once again pursue development of a similar style infantry fighting vehicle. A couple more prototypes were developed by various contractors, including the XM765, which was canceled because it was too slow to keep up with tank formations. America even turned back to the West Germans for help and considered importing the Schützenpanzer Marder I, but this was later rejected for not being amphibious. Real progress started to be made in developing a final version of the infantry fighting vehicle in 1972. When the Army was impressed with a prototype developed by the FMC Corporation, which was originally a company that manufactured pumps for spraying insecticides but made the transition to military vehicles and equipment during World War II. FMC's prototype was designated the XM723 and took heavy inspiration from amphibious assault vehicles used in the Marine Corps. These types of vehicles landed more in the sweet spot of being sufficiently armored, but still prioritized speed and mobility. As development of the XM723 continued, a 25mm Bushmaster cannon was slapped onto the design, as well as the ability to launch TOW anti-tank missiles. After a few years of further development, the prototypical vehicle was renamed to the XM2, with a lighter scout version being named the XM3. 8 XM2s were delivered around the start of 1979. Over the course of this year, both the XM2 and XM3 passed a series of field tests and reviews until final approval for the production was given in 1980. At which point, the official name for the vehicles were given, the M2 and M3 Bradley, named after World War II Army General Omar Bradley. The M2 could carry a crew of 3, as well as a 6-man infantry squad, while the M3 could carry 3 crewmen and a 2-man scout team, as well as additional radio systems and TOW, or Javelin missiles. The first Bradleys rolled off the production line of May of 1980, with the 2nd Armored Division being the first to receive the shiny new hybrid vehicles. A fun fact is the 2nd Armored Unit's commander, Lieutenant Colonel Franklin Trapnell, would later go on to become the manager of the overall Bradley production program. The Bradley measures about 21.5 feet long, with a width of 12 feet and height of about 10 feet, or about 8.6 male American horseshoe crabs. The Bradley weighs in at about 27 tons, significantly heavier than the original desired weight, but the 600 horsepower Cummins engine provides enough power for the Bradley to maintain its required speed. The 25mm chain gun can fire up to 300 rounds per minute and is accurate up to about 2 miles. The anti-tank missile launcher on the Bradley is capable of destroying tanks from a distance up to almost 2.5 miles. An interesting fact is that the anti-tank launcher can only be fired while the vehicle is stationary. This is because the launched missiles use a thin unspooling wire to send guidance commands back to the launcher. The Bradley also has a coaxial 7.62mm machine gun attached to the chain gun, because why not? All versions of the Bradley also have 2 smoke grenade launchers for added defense. Bradleys made their combat debut in the 1991 Gulf War. To the surprise of many, Bradleys actually ended up destroying more Iraqi armored vehicles than the M1 Abrams battle tank. 20 Bradleys were lost during the Gulf War, but it's worth noting that 17 of these losses were due to friendly fire incidents. In response to this, infrared identification panels were added to Bradleys so they could be better distinguished from enemy vehicles. Bradleys also served in the Iraq War, as well as the occupation of Afghanistan, where their vulnerability to improvised explosive devices was highlighted. Overall, around 150 Bradleys were lost during the global war on terror. Even still, many described the Bradley as an absolute workhorse in Iraq and Afghanistan, with its troop transport capabilities being particularly useful for infantry insertions and withdrawals from combat areas. Over the course of the Bradley's combat record in the Middle East, it became the go-to option for rapid deployment of infantry in close contact with the enemy. It can shield its passengers from all forms of small arms fire and smaller forms of artillery, while providing overwatch fire to dismounting infantrymen. While firing ports were originally placed along the sides of the Bradley for infantrymen to fire their weapons, 4 of the ports were eventually removed, and as of now, only 2 firing ports remain, located on the rear ramp. These remaining firing ports are usually sealed with additional armor kits, and a Bradley rolling around combat areas with open firing ports is rare, to say the least. Having ports for infantrymen to fire their rifles was a cool idea, but in practice, it is sort of redundant when the vehicle itself can dispatch basically any target. During the war in Ukraine, the U.S. has donated about 300 Bradleys, where they saw particular use in Ukraine's 2023 Southern Offensive. Of these donated Bradleys, about 182 have been lost, showcasing that while the Bradley is extremely versatile, it does have many of its own vulnerabilities and is not quite as durable as a dedicated battle tank. Over the years, Bradley variants have been released in addition to the M2 and M3 models. The M4 Bradley, referred to as a command and control vehicle, can act as a mobile tactical command post. The M6 Bradley, called the Linebacker, is an air defense variant that has its TOW missile launcher replaced with a 4-tube Stinger missile system, as well as a radar jamming system that can take down enemy UAVs. There is also the M7 Fist model that is specifically designed to aid infantry in small arm engagements. This model replaces the TOW launcher with enhanced target location equipment and better GPS systems to help infantry units with navigation. We once again re-emphasize just how multi-talented Bradley really is. Throughout the Bradley's life, several programs have been launched to try and develop a replacement vehicle. Most of these programs only lasted a few years due to budget cuts and the simple fact that there hasn't been a huge need to replace the Bradley. As of right now, the optionally manned fighting vehicle program has been launched to create the next generation of land-based military vehicles. This program seeks to create a family of vehicles that would eventually replace the M1 Abrams, the Bradley, and even the Striker. These new vehicles are hoped to have more unmanned turrets, a smaller-sized crew, and hybrid electric drives. As of 2023, American Rheinmetall and General Dynamics are competing to deliver impressive prototypes to the Army, with further details about the program being difficult to find. That brings us to today. The Bradley has certainly seen its fair share of action in America's modern conflicts. During the Bradley service, it has provided safe transport for American troops stuck in precarious situations. It has provided fire support during gunfights and has even allowed scouting units to extend their range of operation. It's easy to say that the Army has absolutely gotten their money's worth out of this ambitious, multi-role vehicle. While it is confirmed that potential replacements for the Bradley are in development, it could still be quite a few years before we see the Bradley disappear from America's Army.